All reports look good from here in the blockhouse at this time. All aspects of the mission go. T-minus 30 seconds and counting.
Apollo 8 coming up on 20 seconds, and you're looking very good.
T-minus 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9. We have ignition sequence start. The engines are on. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. We have commit. We have
off. The clock is running.
Roger, clock.
On December 21st, 1968, astronauts James Lovell, William Anders, and Frank Borman embarked upon the first manned mission to orbit the moon.
Houston, your trajectory and guidance are go. Over. Thank you, Michael.
3 days and 240,000 miles later, the crew of Apollo 8 approached their destination. And on December 24th, Christmas Eve, the spacecraft began the last of its 10 orbits around the moon. While looking down on the lunar surface, Borman, Lovell, and Anders delivered a message to what was then the largest live television audience in history.
For all the people back on Earth, the crew of Apollo 8 has a message that we would like to send to you. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good. And from the crew of Apollo 8, we close with good night, a Merry Christmas, and God bless all of you on the good earth.
Shortly after their return to Earth, Mission Commander Frank Borman was asked why the astronauts had chosen to read the Genesis passage. His response echoed his personal faith. "We wanted to transmit our feeling of closeness to the Creator of all things." This wasn't the first time the universe had drawn scientists and explorers closer to God. In fact, many of the founders of modern astronomy, including Nicholas Copernicus, Galileo, and Sir Isaac Newton, sought to reveal and honor their Creator through some of the most important discoveries ever made. This motivation also inspired Johannes Kepler, the German mathematician who first calculated the laws of planetary motion. Early in the 17th century, he wrote that science is the process of thinking God's thoughts after him. And my greatest desire is that I may perceive the God who I find everywhere in the external world. I once had the intention of becoming a theologian. But now I see how God is, by my endeavors, also glorified in astronomy, for the heavens declare the glory of God. Today, more than 4 centuries after Kepler, the universe still captivates us with its splendor and design. It is a mirror that reflects God's artistry and a voice that speaks clearly each night of His character and power. Travel with us now on the wings of some of the most sophisticated technologies ever devised. And as we journey inconceivable distances to fill our eyes with unforgettable views, we will sense the true wonders of the Creator's hand and the glories of His heart.
The very size and the grandeur of the universe, I think, is tremendously humbling. And it may be that through the tremendous beauty that is revealed to us by those photographs from the Hubble telescope and just the enormous size of the universe, we come to appreciate the majesty and the greatness of God, who transcends the universe and is even greater than this cosmos that we see. So I do think that the size of the universe bespeaks the greatness and the majesty of its creator.
Have you ever really thought about the enormity of God? The sheer magnitude of His power and size? It's a tough concept to wrap your mind around because God is spirit, so there's nothing physical about His stature. He can't be measured by meters or miles, time or space. However, it might be possible to catch a glimpse of what we can't see or touch by taking an imaginary journey through His biggest creation. This spacecraft will transport us to the edge of the observable universe, an estimated distance of 270 billion trillion miles. We'll travel at the speed of light, more than 186,000 miles per second. At that velocity, we could make at least 600 complete orbits around the Earth, in less time than it takes to eat a small bowl of popcorn. We depart on January 1st. Hurtling through space, we reach the moon in less than 1.3 seconds. Then 4.5 minutes later, we race past Mars. We continue on toward the gas giant planets: Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. And just 5 hours, 20 minutes after leaving Earth, we reach the dwarf planet, Pluto. Now we'll adjust our flight path for an angle nearly perpendicular to the planetary orbits. Behind us, the boundaries of our cosmic neighborhood quickly vanish. We have entered interstellar space, the great void between our solar system and the next nearest star. A year passes, then 2, 3, 4 years. Finally, on April 19th of the 5th year since our departure from Earth, we are momentarily blinded by the light of the Alpha Centauri system. 3 stars bound together by gravity. They are the closest stars to our sun. We have traveled nearly 26 trillion miles, but we're just getting started. 10 light years from Earth, 24 neighboring stars glimmer in our wake. One of them, Tau Ceti, resembles our sun. 100 light years, clouds of gas and dust in the Orion arm of the Milky Way surround us. 1,000 light years, the elegant spiral shape of our galaxy is clearly visible. Earth is located here. The Milky Way is part of a community of at least 40 galaxies drawn together by gravity to form what is known as the local group. For the rest of our journey, each point of light we see is no longer an individual star, but an entire galaxy filled with billions of stars. Our local group is adjacent to the Virgo cluster, a massive concentration of an estimated 2,000 spiral, elliptical, and dwarf galaxies that emit searing clouds of plasma and dust. This spectacular creation is the heart of a chain of cosmic islands, once shaped by the gravitational pull of 40,000 different galaxies. Collectively, they form the Virgo supercluster, one of the largest structures known to science. But as our view widens, this chain is quickly lost among countless formations of similar composition and size. For Virgo is a drop in a cosmic bucket that may contain as many as 10 million superclusters, each a slender thread in the large-scale construction of the observable universe. Our journey has transported us 45 billion light years from Earth to the outer limits of scientific discovery. A sprawling web of filaments spun from perhaps 2 trillion galaxies, and stars more numerous than grains of sand on all the deserts and beaches of the world. So how big is God? He's big enough to create a universe with dimensions so vast they are beyond our comprehension. Yet in the words of the prophet Isaiah, he can measure it all with the fingers of his hand. The magnitude of God's power and size can never be reckoned by mathematics or physics, for he is omnipotent, eternal, and infinite. But if we explore the cosmos with open minds, not limited to theories of blind chance and the random collision of atoms, we discover a magnificent tapestry crafted by a consummate artist who once spoke all of this into existence from absolutely nothing, then revealed glimpses of his identity through the grandeur and design of everything he had made. And for anyone who has ever looked into a clear night sky, evidence of God's stature and character shines brighter than the light from 1,000 stars.
It has been said by many physicists that the discovery that the universe is finite in the past and had a beginning is one of the most monumental discoveries in the history of science. It completely upturned the view that had dominated science for over 2,000 years. This was rooted in Genesis chapter 1 and verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And one of the remarkable developments of 20th century cosmology is the confirmation of this ancient Jewish prediction of a beginning of the universe.
During the 1920s, 2 of the most important discoveries in the history of science were made here at the Mount Wilson Observatory overlooking Los Angeles. For 8 years, astronomer Edwin Hubble photographed and studied the cosmos with the largest telescope in the world. In 1923, Hubble confirmed that mysterious formations called nebulae, widely believed to be enormous clouds of gas, stars, and dust within the Milky Way, were actually individual galaxies located far beyond our own. 5 years later, he verified that these galaxies were moving away from each other at fantastic speeds. Our universe, long thought to be eternal, static, and relatively small, was growing larger by the second. The implications were staggering. If the universe is continually expanding, then at some point early in its history, it must have been smaller and more compact.
If you reverse the outward motions of the galaxies and go backward in time, they come closer and closer together, and you reach a point finally where they're nearly infinite in density and temperature, and farther than that you can't go. So there is a beginning, there is a point in time from which it all started. And that's a remarkable thing because it has a very strong theological flavor to it. And that intrigued me because I am an agnostic, and if there was a beginning, a moment of creation in the universe, then there was a creator. And a creator is not compatible with agnosticism. And just as I can't believe that there was a creator, I can't believe that this all happened by chance, which implies there was a creator. So you see, I'm in a completely hopeless bind, and I've stayed there.
Robert Jastrow's uncertainty was fueled by multiple discoveries that pointed to a universe created out of nothing and governed by laws of physics and chemistry, finely calibrated to ensure complex life.
Life is so extraordinary, especially advanced life, intelligent life. Conscious beings are such an extraordinary phenomenon that, again, I just qualitatively find it difficult to believe that they happened by chance. Think of your brain, for example. It's 3 pounds of matter, contains 1,000,000 trillion synapses, as I recall, circuits opening and closing all the time. It's so much more complicated than the most advanced artificial intelligence. Again, I find it hard to believe that this is all a matter of atoms and molecules. And so I try to fit into my concept of the world the conclusion that there is a larger force of some kind, which we can call God, or you can call it whatever. But I can't accept that. I'm what's called a materialist in philosophy. That doesn't mean I like Cadillacs and big cars. My students always used to think that. It means that I believe the world consists entirely of material substances. And when you specify those substances, the atoms and molecules, and the laws by which they interact, you've done it all. There isn't anything more to be said or inserted into your model of the universe. And that's what my science tells me. I've been a scientist all my life, but I find it unsatisfactory. In fact, it makes me uneasy. I feel I'm missing something, but it will not. I will not find out what I'm missing within my lifetime.
Robert Jastrow died in 2008. As the founder of NASA's Goddard Space Institute and the director of the Mount Wilson Observatory, he helped to popularize astronomy throughout the world. In his best-selling book, God and the Astronomers, Jastrow described the philosophical conflict between scientific materialism and evidence for a universe that had a beginning. Far from disproving the existence of God, astronomers may be finding more circumstantial evidence that God exists, that the universe began abruptly in an act of creation. For the scientist who has lived by his faith in the power of reason, the story ends like a bad dream. He has scaled the mountains of ignorance. He is about to conquer the highest peak. And as he pulls himself over the final rock, he is greeted by a band of theologians who have been sitting there for centuries.
We're privileged to be on a highly habitable planet that allows us to live comfortably and have everything we need to do science and to learn about the universe around us and to learn about our origins and to be able to answer just about any question we can come up with. And of course, somebody could always say, well, it's just chance. Well, that's their philosophy. And they can always fall back on that if they want, but it's not a satisfying explanation for me. It started with an experience I had in 1995. I went to observe a total eclipse of the sun in India. It was my first total eclipse of the sun. It was a spectacular event. It's just an experience for all the emotions. Either astronomers who can understand the whole phenomenon and can predict it to within a second of time anywhere on the Earth, or a local native, are equally in awe and reacting in the same way to this incredible phenomenon. It really left a big impression on me.
For 51 unforgettable seconds, Guillermo Gonzalez and thousands of others looked on in wonder at this rare astronomical event. Gonzalez would later reflect upon both the mysterious beauty he had witnessed in the North Indian skies and the factors that had made it possible.
Fabulous. The requirements for producing a total eclipse of the sun are a luminous body, in our case the sun, an eclipsing body, in our case the moon, and then an observer platform, in our case the surface of the Earth, and they all have to be in a straight line in space. The apparent size of the moon in the sky has to be almost exactly the same as the apparent size of the sun in the sky. They're both about half a degree. The sun is 400 times bigger than the moon, but it's 400 times further away. So there's this coincidence people have noted for centuries, but they just say, oh, well, it's a coincidence, and shrug their shoulders. The best place in the entire solar system to view solar eclipses is from the surface of the Earth. I've actually calculated the circumstances for eclipses from all the other planets and all the other moons, about 65 of them, the major moons. And it's an amazing coincidence. The one place that has observers is the one place that has the best eclipses.
As Gonzalez examined this rare alignment of sun, moon, and earth, he recognized the importance of these celestial bodies to the existence of complex life on our planet. The gravitational pull exerted by our moon, for example, is strong enough to regulate the Earth's climate by stabilizing its tilt and helping to circulate the warm and cold waters of its oceans. While our planet's distance from the sun permits both liquid water and an oxygen-rich atmosphere.
You have to have the right distance of the observer's home planet from its host star. And you have to have a large moon. And so there's this very strong overlap between the requirements for producing eclipses and the requirements for habitability, for having a planet that can support life.
What if those things that make a planet habitable also make that planet the best place for making scientific discoveries? The nature of our planet, the nature of its atmosphere, the location in the solar system, the type of solar system it's in, even the type of star that we're around and the location within the galaxy are optimal for making a wide range of scientific discoveries. It turns out that those are also all the most important conditions for a habitable planet, that is, for a planet that's conducive to beings like us and without which we could not survive. I think that's just the sort of pattern that ought to suggest to people conspiracy rather than mere coincidence.
Within the gossamer light of a solar eclipse, Gonzalez and Richards recognized a fascinating connection between the factors necessary for complex life and scientific observation.
We've often been told, especially in the 20th century, that the universe does not have us in mind. That is, that we exist in a very large universe and that the universe was not designed for beings like us. We are simply life that happened to come about on a tiny little planet surrounding a tiny insignificant star in a run-of-the-mill galaxy within a very large universe that was not intended. Our argument suggests something completely different. It suggests that the universe was intended, that the universe exists for a purpose, and that purpose isn't simply for beings like ourselves to exist, but for us to extend ourselves beyond our small and parochial home, to view the universe at large, to discover the universe, and in fact, perhaps, to consider whether that universe points beyond itself.
There's something about the universe that can't be simply explained just by the impersonal forces of nature and atoms colliding with atoms. And so you have to reach for something beyond the universe to try to account for it. Why would the universe be such that those places that are most habitable also offer the best opportunity for scientific discovery.
We had the whole mosaic of the solar system that we did with the pictures we took from Voyager up on a wall in the auditorium here. And, you know, there was kind of a velvet rope in front of it, but people would always go up and they'd want to touch the Earth. They'd point to it and go, "We're here, you are here, that's where we are." And they would touch it. And I don't think it mattered how many do not touch signs were put up. People invariably wanted to reach out and touch the Earth. And so as a result, you know, I don't know how many times they replaced that picture, but it would get a hole rubbed in it, and it would have to be, that particular picture would have to be replaced.
In December 1980, NASA's Voyager 1 spacecraft completed its historic exploration of Jupiter and Saturn. By every metric, the mission was a spectacular success. For more than 20 months, the unmanned probe surveyed and photographed the two largest planets and their moons, revealing a wealth of information about these mysterious worlds. 10 years later, as Voyager prepared to leave the solar system, astronomer and mission specialist Carl Sagan requested a final series of photographs that would include planet Earth.
It was Carl Sagan's idea, and he wanted to give the public a picture of just how tiny and isolated the planet Earth is. So ultimately, we designed what we call a sequence, which is a series of camera commands, and pointed the scan platform of the spacecraft at one planet after another, and we kind of had some pictures of the star background as well.
On February 14, 1990, Voyager's wide and narrow field cameras captured this mosaic of the solar system. One of the frames was a view of Earth engulfed by a ray of sunlight, our planet, from 3.7 billion miles away.
It's just a tiny little bright pixel. You can't really make out continents or oceans. It's just, you know, it's like home is just so far away.
The pale blue dot captured the imagination of the world. And in 1994, Carl Sagan shared his reactions to the picture during a lecture at Cornell University.
We live on an insignificant planet of a humdrum star lost in a galaxy, tucked away in some forgotten corner of a universe in which there are far more galaxies than people. But consider again that dot. That's here. That's home. That's us. On it, everyone you know, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives. The aggregate of our joy and suffering, every hero and coward, every peasant and king, every young couple in love, every mother and father, every hopeful child, every inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there on a mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam. The Earth is a very small stage in a vast cosmic arena. Our posturings, our imagined self-importance, the delusion that we have some privileged position in the universe are challenged by this point of pale light. Our planet is a lonely speck in the great enveloping cosmic dark. In our obscurity, in all this vastness, there is no hint that help will come from elsewhere to save us from ourselves.
To paraphrase, Sagan says, what this shows us is our cosmic insignificance. We weren't intended, we weren't designed, no one's watching out for us, we're on our own. Okay, so take that picture of cosmic isolation and loneliness and counterpose it to the biblical picture of design. In this contrasting theistic picture, we were designed, we were intended, we were planned for, we aren't alone. Those two pictures of reality will lead you in very different directions.
3,000 years before Carl Sagan pondered the significance of planets and people, David, Israel's shepherd king, looked into the night sky and found answers of his own. They are recorded in the Psalms of the Old Testament.
O Lord, your glory is higher than the heavens. When I look at the night sky and see the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars you set into place, what are mere mortals that you should think about them? Human beings that you should care for them. Yet you made them only a little lower than the angels and crowned them with glory and honor. You have examined my heart and know everything about me. You know when I sit down or stand up. You know my thoughts even when I'm far away. You know what I'm going to say even before I say it. You go before me and follow me. You place your hand of blessing on my head. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too great for me to understand. You created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. You watched me as I was being formed in utter seclusion, as I was woven together in darkness. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well.
So David is open in his heart because deep down inside he has the right reaction, which is, I'm a created being. I am the product of a mind that built me and all of that. And despite the fact that he built all of that, which is so grand and so much vaster than me, he cares about me. He cares about me. I think Carl Sagan's perception is so strikingly different because Carl Sagan's universe has, well, in a sense, God's gone. And if the main actor for David, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, has left the scene, then who's responsible? Who built it? Who built it all? And if it's not a mind, if it's not an intellect, if it's not a person, a supremely powerful being that we can have a relationship with, then all that remains is physics. Physics has to run the show. And we become, instead of an intended, designed creature of a great creator, we become a lucky outcome of a long string of cosmic accidents. And that's a very lonely place to be.
So what should we make of the pale blue dot and the passengers who call it home? Are we cast adrift on a speck of dust, hopelessly lost in a cold, dark universe? Or is our planet's oxygen-rich atmosphere an abundance of liquid water? Its temperate climate and ideal location within the solar system, its magnetic field, geography, and dozens of other factors that make life possible. All the magnificent products of mind, purpose, and plan. And if Earth was designed as a sanctuary for human beings, then is it possible we exist for a reason beyond mere survival? Perhaps our destiny is unique in the universe, and like David, we may live out our days on the pale blue dot for the highest purpose of all: to know God and enjoy Him forever.
God, as our creator, has this infinite array of possible ways of communicating with us. Now, one of them could be he just comes down here and grabs us by the shoulders and says, "Wake up, you're in trouble," right? But God's a lot more subtle than that. And in particular, he doesn't bend our wills to his in a way that's really mysterious and hard to understand. He puts things in front of us and says, "Now you respond." So probably for me, the most effective way that God has of communicating with me, next to the Bible, is the world that he made and the beauty in the world that he made. I think God did what he could to communicate with us via his artistic dimension.
They rank among the world's 7 greatest natural wonders. Stunning displays of performance art, once celebrated in prehistoric cave paintings, Viking mythology, and the plays of Shakespeare. In 1619, Galileo named them the auroras, after the Roman goddess of the dawn. Today, we also call them the northern and southern lights. In the ethereal glow of this heavenly fire, the beauty, mystery, and wonder, so evident throughout the universe, lights up the polar skies from Iceland to Antarctica.
You're puzzled by it, you're curious about it, it's beautiful, it's subtle, it's interesting. All of these things are awakened. Wow. And then that wow stimulates why, right? Why is that there? What is it doing? What causes it?
Every aurora in our solar system originates here, on the turbulent surface of a G2 main sequence star, 93 million miles from Earth. Periodically, surges of energy generated deep within the sun's core trigger massive storms that can eject billions of tons of highly charged plasma, much of which heads toward Earth on a collision course.
We are bathed all the time in radiation from our big hot neighbor, and we're made up in part of delicate molecules like DNA that don't like ionizing radiation zapping it.
If left unchecked, this solar wind could quickly strip away our atmosphere, boil off the oceans, and devastate all forms of life. Fortunately, we're protected from these catastrophes by a remarkable provision. Beneath our planet's crust and mantle, a layer of molten iron, nickel, and sulfur, 1,500 miles thick, flows continuously around a solid iron core. This movement produces a magnetic field that radiates from Earth's core through its poles and then thousands of miles into space. When the plasma hits the shield, most of the lethal particles are deflected before reaching Earth's surface. but some are drawn to the magnetic field lines and funneled directly to the North and South poles. About 99% of our atmosphere consists of nitrogen and oxygen atoms. These components are electrically neutral. The instant plasma collides with an atom, an electron absorbs the surge of energy and momentarily widens its orbit around the nucleus. This supercharged particle then returns to its normal position and size by releasing a single photon, a small wave of colored light. The process is repeated across the night sky. Depending upon their altitude, the oxygen atoms release green and reddish photons, the nitrogen deep blue and shades of purple. This flurry of atomic reactions generates vast luminous curtains that can extend 250 miles into space. Sometimes they form spectacular rings that crown the magnetic poles. While orbiting Earth in the International Space Station, astronauts have photographed the auroras and revealed their mysterious splendor in ways never seen before. This beauty speaks to us eloquently without saying a word.
I think the aurora itself is a beautiful glittering banner shimmering away. It's a message, and it's saying this planet is not an accident, and the fact that you're on it is not an accident. God gave us a world that, if we give it half a chance, testifies reliably to Him. And that testimony, that voice that comes to us from nature, only gets stronger and more beautiful the more you know. God's infinite wisdom really is infinite, and He made a world that has so many interesting details: awe, majesty, wonder, beauty, biological function, planetary integrity, the role of the planet as a whole in sustaining life. You put the pieces in place. You're following this mystery from clue to clue to clue. And I think what happens, certainly in my case, is you realize the Earth didn't just happen to be a place where life could flourish. It was designed to be a place where life could flourish. This planet was built to be inhabited.
This convergence of functional design and extraordinary beauty, so evident in Earth's magnetic field, is also a means God uses to communicate through every facet of creation. First, He captures our attention with breathtaking artistry, for the natural world is a gallery filled with countless masterpieces, each bursting with meaning and revelation. Then, if we search diligently to understand the hows and whys of the cosmos, we come face to face with the creator of it all. The eternal artist and engineer who crafted the physical wonders that lift our eyes, inspire our hearts, and ensure our survival on the third planet from the sun.
It's elegant, it's mind-blowing, it's more beautiful than we can imagine. Design makes the most sense to me because it explains the patterns we see in the universe, and it explains the origin of life as being due to some intelligence that creates such beauty and complexity that we can't find anywhere else. I think that the more we learn, the more complex things will be. But at the same time, I think we'll find underlying principles which will provide insight into the mind of the designer. And the more we learn about that, the more incredible it becomes.
Here's a question that could literally keep you awake all night. How many stars are there in the universe? On a clear evening in the desert without a telescope, we can see about 5,000 individual stars. All of them are located in the Milky Way, a fairly typical spiral galaxy with a stellar population somewhere between 100 billion and 400 billion stars. And the Milky Way is just a speck in the observable universe, where estimates range from 100 billion to perhaps as many as 2 trillion total galaxies. Now, let's do the math. Using conservative estimates, we'll multiply 100 billion galaxies times 10 billion stars per galaxy. The product is a whopping 1 billion trillion stars. And remember, that's a low-end estimation. To appreciate a number that large, we need some context. So let's try this. There are roughly 135,000 grains in 1 cubic inch of sand, and about 235 million in a cubic foot. While exact measurements are nearly impossible to determine, geographers estimate there are approximately 220,000 miles of coastline and 6 million square miles of sand desert on the surface of our planet. Using estimates like these, researchers at the University of Hawaii have calculated that in all the deserts and beaches of the world, there are something like 7.5 times 10 to the 18th power, or more than 7 billion individual grains of sand. Again, an estimate like this is an educated guess. So to make some allowance for the difficulty of actually counting sand, let's increase the Hawaiian calculation by a factor of 10. Now that'll build you a lot of castles, but it's only a fraction of the total number of stars. Because when we compare the estimates of total sand to total stars, the stars outnumber the sand grains by at least 10 to 1. But that may not be the most amazing part of this story. You see, a single grain of sand, 4/100ths of an inch in diameter, contains approximately 500 billion individual atoms. That's more atoms in one grain than total grains of sand on the Earth, or stars in a billion Milky Way galaxies. Okay, before we power down our calculators, here's a final dose of big numbers. In a single drop of water, there are about 1.7 billion trillion individual H2O molecules. That means in just a few large drops, the total number of molecules could exceed the total number of stars in the entire universe. So, what's our takeaway from these mathematical excursions into the basic structure of creation? Well, for starters, we live on a planet that's part of a cosmos unimaginably large and complex. And that planet is filled with countless atomic and molecular universes, inconceivably small and often even more complex. And each of these physical realms, gigantic or microscopic, is held together every second of every hour of every day by the God who created everything. Remember that next time you're searching for scarab beetles in the Sahara Desert, or camping in South America under the breathtaking glow of the Milky Way. or just hanging out in the backyard, watching your wet dog launch 10,000 liquid universes on a summer afternoon.
When my 6-year-old daughter looks at the stars, she tells me, well, it's so obvious that God exists. How could anyone question this? How could anyone think otherwise? There's an intuitive sense in which God has clearly done this. We're designed so that we see God through the created order. It's a book. It reads. We're meant to read it. It points beyond itself. He's chosen to create a universe as this backdrop that is constantly and continually at every time and place, day after day, night after night, testifying to his existence. This is the idea of God's general revelation. It's general, it's continuous. God's creation is active. It declares God's glory.
The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day they pour forth speech. Night after night they reveal knowledge. They use no words, not a sound is heard from them. Yet their voice goes out into all the earth, their words to the ends of the world. Lift up your eyes and look to the heavens. Who created all these? He who brings out the starry host one by one. He determines the number of stars and calls them each by name. Great is our Lord and mighty in power. His understanding is infinite. The Lord is the great God, the great King above all gods. In his hand are the depths of the earth, and the mountain peaks belong to him. The sea is his, for he made it, and his hands formed the dry land. All the nations are but a drop in the bucket. They are nothing more than dust on the scales. He picks up the earth as though it were a grain of sand. And these are just the beginning of all that he does, merely a whisper of his power. Come and see the works of God, who is awesome in his deeds. He spreads out the northern skies over empty space. He suspends the earth over nothing. He marks out the horizon on the face of the waters for a boundary between light and darkness. Those who live at the ends of the earth stand in awe of your wonders. From where the sun rises to where it sets, you inspire shouts of joy. I will wake the dawn with my song. I will sing your praises among the nations. For your unfailing love is as high as the heavens. Your faithfulness reaches to the clouds. Be exalted, O God. May your glory shine over all the earth.